Before you go, Mike,
Oh.
It's fine. No, let it go. Let it go. Go ahead. Let it go.
Well, hold on.
All right, Sarah, this is another off-script podcast, and I've seen enough scripts today, so let's count it in at 3, 2.
Are you?
No,
I'll lead it. Okay.
You said I'm going to lead it off. Okay, fine. 3, 2. Welcome everybody to the Off Script podcast. If you listen to the main podcast, you understand that maybe you heard me clicking on and off my mic, but no, it wasn't me. It was actually Mike. We're going to have to get you a kill switch, buddy.
A kill switch so that I can turn your mic off?
Let's move on.
Okay.
So this is the Off Script podcast here, Jeremy Schreiber. We're happy because from what I've known about you is third person through Mike. Through third party, I've heard we can have some great conversations. And so that's my life. My life is hearing everybody's conversation, approvals of whether I'm allowed to do that or not as a pharmacist. And I assure them I am allowed to do pretty much whatever I say I'm allowed to do.
So I want to go first. So can I give my favorite Jeremy story? I think that's a good lead off into the off script. Oh boy, my wife's over here making faces.
I like that she's making faces. In the
she's
background.
She's heard enough Jeremy stories that she's already cringing. All right.
Well, I want to tell you, Mike, before you go, I was blown away by John's intro. John, I mean that when I say that. That was remarkable. That was a piece of art in and of itself. It's beautifully done.
It was quite filleting, yes.
I enjoy it. I enjoy it. My personality is to make people enjoy whatever they're doing. So this is just another part of it. You know, hey, maybe I will have that face for radio one day.
Yet another good reminder that your wife listens to this.
Oh, goddamn.
Uh-huh. All right.
I can say that word though. So
anyways, I have a couple Jeremy stories, but Jeremy, I'm going to tell the story of when you and I met.
Oh. What was I wearing, Mike?
Do you remember this? I don't remember. But okay, so Jeremy and I met.
What weren't you wearing?
Jeremy and I met, I think it was 2018. So we both were on an advisory committee for a company, which will remain nameless. So we met each other during this advisory committee. And as with all of these meetings, usually when you go to these types of ad boards, there's usually physicians, and then there's just a token number of PAs or NPs. So usually there's not a lot of you. I think it was you, me, and Carmen. That's how we all met. Or you had met Carmen earlier. But so after the ad board was done, we were both taking red-eye flights out because this was on the West Coast. So we both had some time to kill. So we split an Uber and we went down to the ocean. And we had this beautiful romantic dinner right on the ocean, watched the sunset. Quite romantic. I was moved. But then we rented scooters. And so and we had like a drink or two. We were not drunk.
This is what grown men do away from their wives.
Yes, correct. Yes. So we rented scooters and we were tearing up and down the boardwalk. People were screaming at us, cursing at us. It took us about a half an hour to figure out that the reason they were yelling at us was scooters are not allowed on the boardwalk. We were weaving in and out of people, going 20 miles an hour on these scooters. So then we had the brilliant idea that instead of taking an Uber home, we would just take the scooters home.
Oh, boy.
So we were going, and one of us had our phones up, and we were looking at the map and just following it, riding on these scooters. And before you know it, we are on the on-ramp to the thruway, not realizing that the only way back to the hotel was the on-ramp to the thruway. So we realized our misfortune. We were already, up the on-ramp on the overpass. So we took the scooters, we threw them over the overpass onto the embankment, and then walked back and then called a cab. But yeah, just ditched the scooters in the ditch. I think they may have fallen into the water. I don't even know what happened to them.
Like a bad pair of underwear after a good Mexican meal.
It got scary for a minute. I don't know how we didn't realize that this was the thruway until we were already up on it. Yes.
So what Frank and I were dealing. Remember that?
Yes, that very similar story. So the other one I've got, Jeremy, is you were a faculty member for a speaker training. I forget which company. And so you're up on stage and the whole room is full of, stuffy doctors. And Jeremy goes, yeah, when you're younger and you go to a party and, they've got a big tray of pills just laying out, and you just go up and you take a handful and you take them, and you never know what you're going to get. And he's telling this story up on stage in front of probably 500 people. And I look around the room, and you've got these physicians that are in their 60s, 70s, and they're all like horrified. Everybody just jaws dropped. The good news, Jeremy, every single person in the room was listening. No one was distracted at that point. They were all
That's
enthralled.
where my docu-sit went.
Yeah.
So not everybody goes to West Virginia pill parties when they're younger, I guess.
In all fairness, I was talking about my friend.
Your friend, yes.
I know.
He ate all that medicine that gave him that adverse reaction. He had to go to the hospital for 3 days.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
The more impressive thing is Jeremy remembers this, is that he remembers this exact story and could
was
pull
in the
right
police
back up.
statement. That's probably why.
Yeah. Well, one of the interesting things is I talked to that particular organization about, like how to add color to the presentations. And this is something that we should be doing. And it's kind of become a mainstay of that particular organization's, presentation style that they want to see with their presenters, is that it's the color.
That's what I know that I can do. And to a fault sometimes, though, needing to reel it in, but having to hold it back, it's always at the tip of my tongue. Something witty, something very relatable, something that will draw people in and listen, but without switching and saying, okay, now he's too unprofessional to listen to. I want to ride that knife's edge as hard as I can, because that's my personality. Even if it is just, okay, where's that line? I'm going to make sure that I'm on the line that is most comfortable for the company, but yet intriguing for everybody else. So
I think with that, to tie into the main episode with public speaking, teaching is such a good segue into public speaking for that reason, because when you're teaching, you have so much more editorial freedom. But also, if you tell a joke that is maybe flat, if you have an analogy that doesn't actually tie in as well as you thought it did, like you
you're
talked
just
about,
a dad.
Yeah, in the main episode, you talked about comedians working on their stuff at coffee shops.
Yeah.
Teaching can be that. There are so many schools, universities, programs that are always looking for guest lecturers, and they don't pay very well, but it builds your CV. It shows that you're a key thought leader. It shows that you're an expert in the field, and it also allows you to hone your craft and become better at what you do.
I've got a story about giving a talk. Now, this added color, not to my intention. Mike, you're going to have to remind me, did I already speak about, in a past podcast, about my HIV rotation at the hospital? Okay. Did I already talk about my presentation about...
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
the heart. Okay.
You did.
So I won't bring that one back up again, but the point is...
This was the vaginal one?
Vaginal. So I knew this patient backwards and forwards. I was the only student probably that went through the school that decided to go to the HIV specialty twice and then move into an ID rotation. So I knew my materials and I knew the physicians, the specialists I worked with. I was rounding with them. I was comfortable. Yet this is your last year. You have to shine at this point. So I had this down. I knew what we were going to change the backbone therapy to. And we're going to fix this lady's vaginal flap as well because it was infected. But it's a vaginal flap. And when you say this in front of everybody who has probably worked on the plastic surgery for this patient, as well as treating them for said disease state, when you say vaginal instead of vaginal, everybody woke up. And then, the professor in the back, just horrified look. But they listened. I took a lot away from that one, though. Know the words you are going to speak, especially if they're sexually explicit.
Yeah, and you should also know the words that you're going to write. Like, you should never write pussy discharge. Unless you're on your colleague's computer on their name in Epic. Yeah, there's certain things you can't write. There's certain things you can't say. But at the same time, John, there's also a part of public speaking that you can have. When you're working your jokes, you can have that shock value also hone the point in for you as well. Like this is what
pill parties in West Virginia.
Pill parties in West
Right,
Virginia,
truly.
or
West
whatever
Virginia.
the case is. you know, a lot of times because I'm from West Virginia, I'll say, like, oh, I'm wearing shoes to this talk, or, and I have all my teeth. I thought about making a comment tonight about how how I've been losing weight, and that obesity is an epidemic, but it's okay because I'm from West Virginia, and I still look all right here. And then I was going to say, but then half of the people in West Virginia would be mad at me, so maybe I should make it with Mississippi as my my thing. And I'm like,
our number one audience segment is Mississippi. Be careful now.
Yeah, no, but the point is, like, what you don't want to do when you're speaking is you don't want to infuriate your audience, right? So when you're honing your jokes, you don't want to infuriate them, and that's the point I'm getting at.
Mm-hmm.
So I have I talked about writing a book. I have a chapter in my book called "Sharpen Your Shtick," right? Because John was like, I like it.
I love The Office. I live on it. Let's go.
Yeah. So part of it is, one of the ways to get to engagement, I don't know what you guys think, but you got to be funny. You got to bring your own self to the presentation. Now, some of what we did before this is a little bit more dry, but you have to bring yourself, and you have to bring the jokes, and you have to bring the humor, and you have to bring your wit. Yeah. I whitewater raft a lot. And I was actually just whitewater rafting the other day. And when you're done whitewater rafting, the rafting guide, and when the bus takes you back to your vehicles, the rafting guide stands at the front, and they just tell you these terrible jokes, right? Like, what's the difference between a large pizza and a rafting guide? And everybody knows, a large pizza will feed a family, and what do you call a cow with no legs? It's ground beef. And this one rafting guide, I'm up at the front, and this woman is delivering these jokes, and she says, what the most important part of a joke is? Timing. And I lost it, right? Because she's butchering it on purpose. And she paused, and she looked at me, and she said, I've been telling that joke for 4 years, and no one has ever laughed. And I thought to myself, well, it was perfect. You ruined it to make your point. It was just that well done. And that's what I think you do when you present. You weave everything together. You tell the right jokes. You make your points when you want to make them. And that's also how you deliver impactful presentations. Mike, you're speaking a lot out there in the world. I talked to you tonight, and I texted you, right? What did I say? I said, hey, I'm moderating your lecture that you're giving on whatever day it is.
I can't believe we didn't even know this. It's such a small world. Yeah, so that'll be fun. I'm looking forward to that, because if I'm remembering, last time I did work with this company, the moderator has, significant interaction with the speakers. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to give a little bit of a shtick between the two of us as we hand it off.
Yeah, I hope so. And it's interesting, though. They just sent me the stuff for it, and they're like, oh, yeah, look at this stuff. It's not finalized. And we're doing this in, like less than a week. And I'm like, you're ruining everything that I do as a presenter. Like, being prepared is a huge portion of this role. And then moderating is a different art form that you have to do kind of within the same role.
How am I going to bring up Nana in this? I can't bring up Nana now. I got to find some other reason to bring her up.
Tell me that you're talking about your grandmother and not a banana.
Well, listen, funny enough, my grandmother, who we call Nana, her nickname is Nana
Banana.
Orange.
Not a joke. Not a joke.
You know what I really like about you, John, when you talk, you do this point. And right when we went into this Patreon aspect, we go to recording and you point, and I'm thinking, we're all looking at each other, and I'm like, who is John pointing at? Is it me?
Is there somebody behind me? Who is it?
Whose turn is this?
All right. So, Jeremy, we've both now told stories of some public speaking embarrassment. My stories were all about you, but that's okay. So do you have any hilarious public speaking where you just fell flat on your face, where something just, did not go the way you planned?
Yeah. So I told you the joke about where, not the joke, but when I used to say, I was talking about a particular thing, and you basically have to shake it, or, to reconstitute it or whatever. And I was talking about, beating it like a redheaded stepchild. And, that's when I got the glare. Right. So I was like, okay, well, let's go with a different one. And I started using beat it like a borrowed mule. And then I went with beat it like it owes you money. And borrowed mule of the three is the best. And there's other times when I've done stuff that has worked like really well, and I at one point I was giving this lecture and I was talking about medication administration and where in the body this medication is going, and it goes into the gluteal muscle. And I said to the audience, I said, and I'd show you exactly where that goes, but then you would see the butterfly on my lower back. And this woman in the audience spits her drink out, and I was like, I'm keeping that in there forever. I will tell that joke endlessly. And I kind of, this is a great point that I want to make, Mike. Let me ask you a question, you and John both. What kind of music do you listen to?
Go ahead, Mike. Please tell him.
Country, soft pop.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say folk, and even I would even go to say outlaw country, which is your Johnny Cash, Chris Christopherson, those guys.
Okay, so do you guys both like Tyler Childers or Childers?
Oh, Childers, yeah, let's go. Yeah.
Okay, so you guys both like. So let's say that you're gonna go see Tyler in concert. All right, like what do you want him to play? Like
the guitar. Sorry. Go
ahead. Dead Man's Curve, or Nose to the Grindstone, or Charleston Girl, or something like that. You want to see that, and then a couple weeks later, you just went to the concert. A couple weeks later, your friend calls you up and says, "Hey, listen, I got tickets to the Tyler show. Like, do you want to go?" You're like, "Yeah, I'll go." And when you show up, what do you want Tyler to play for you? Same thing, right? You want to hear Charleston Girl and Nose to the Grindstone and Dead Man's Curve. You want the same thing because it's the best, right? Like, this is good, and it was good 2 weeks ago, and it's still good today. Well, the problem with public speaking and the art form of public speaking is that you're not a rock star, even if you are a rock star. So the only other position to be in at the top of the public speaking game is to be in the kind of the comedy realm. And John, I can tell that you fit right in there, right? That's
I got a history. Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, that's part of your thing. But the problem is you can't tell all the same jokes in your backyard over and over again. And so when I think about speaking, I travel often. And I travel often because over time, I've refined my material and my stories to be honed, concise, orchestrated, like we talked about earlier. I can't tell the same jokes that I told 2 weeks ago to the same audience. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, it sounds a lot like what we heard growing up as pastors. They always had what? 3 points in a poem, right? Wasn't a song 3 points in a poem? And it was always the same 3 points. It was, if you knew this guy was coming around your time of year, and it was going to be the story that everybody knew that story. But that's the fun thing about being in practice, I think, or still having that edge, is you continue to feed it. It's like having an officer at your Thanksgiving table or a fireman. It's just clinical stories with patients are the best.
Absolutely.
The things that people put in their bodies. I will tell you, every orifice has been used.
Yeah, and psych is a great realm to exist in for great stories. I mean, like, what are the stories? Like, if you're talking about, like a blood pressure medicine, well, Bob didn't have a heart attack. Like, how good is that going to be, right? It's not going to be awesome. So you have to be able to craft and weave the stories and tell the jokes and make everything make sense. And in psych, there's nothing more real than what happens in a psychiatry office.
Except the stuff you have to treat with a lot of Seroquel.
That might happen in a psychiatry office.
Yeah.
A little bit, yeah. So, Jeremy, how many talks are you given every year?
Oh,
what's the estimate?
I think, in 2021, it was a relatively light year because there was the pandemic, right? And I had, I think it was around 120
talks.
God. And that's 120 medication talks. That doesn't include the CME talks or other types of lectures. It doesn't include all the faculty work.
You're playing concerts more than like Leonard Skinner did.
But you don't get to do hundreds of talks a year if you're not a good speaker, right? And it takes a lot of time to do hundreds of talks a year. And then at the same time, I also have patients to see at my practice, so I'm just very busy. But yeah, I think that in 2021, you figure we started to come out of the pandemic around February, March. Is that about right, Mike?
Yeah, that sounds
When
right.
things
I think
started
March
to-
of 21 was kind of when the world decided to go back to normal.
Yeah, and not all of the world either.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Not all of the world. So just some of the world that employs people that, or I don't want to say employees, that's not the right word, but that hires people to do presentations on their behalf.
Mm-hmm.
And so not all of the companies or, even the medical education organizations came out of that void. We were doing a lot of stuff virtually. And I think 100 and some presentations in about, 9 months is pretty good.
Do you know what the average is?
If I had to guess, I would probably say it's maybe 4 or 5.
Yeah, I think it's around 5. So the average pharmaceutical speaker does 5. Just to give context, I do about 70 to 80 a year. Okay. And I feel like I am way, way, way busy. So I don't know how you do it. But yeah.
I guess that's where it becomes
heavy.
Well, it's usually those who can't do teach, right? But in this, I said right.
I rubbed off on you, John.
I don't say that. Okay. If you've ruined my career, I'm coming after you. So
we'll go fishing when you get here.
Please, thank you. Those who can't do teach, but in this aspect, I can't think of many professions or skill sets in which once you've gotten to a certain position, which what else can I really speak on that's going to add value to my life that is not taking up room from anybody else? You can teach at that point, and people will only come to you if you can offer something that has been realized that you have experience with. I'm not going to go to somebody who comes out of college with a teaching, or rather a speaking degree, if that's even in existence somewhere.
Communications.
We'll call it communications. Sure. You have to have experience. So I'm happy that you're going to be moving into maybe I'm assuming, but a teaching space, because there is a lot to offer there. There's plenty of people who want to go there. I'd like to speak more. So this has been very interesting and eye-opening for me. And I like to see your passion.
John,
this has been fun.
Do you speak at all?
I used to speak in my last role because I had to do many presentations in the previous position. And I am now adjunct faculty at my alma mater. I'll be doing some classwork there, teaching at the business school, some other lecturing as well on the side to primarily develop this side of what I do, but also pairing it with what we're trying to teach with non-traditional career paths. So that is how I'm trying to develop that at this point, and we'll see where that goes.
Well, I think that you'll be great at it, and I meant what I said when you did your introduction. It was fantastic.
I appreciate that.
Really, it was a masterpiece. And if you can make an introduction into a masterpiece, you can make a talk into a masterpiece.
Well, I'll learn from you then.
I knew getting you two in the room together was going to be explosive.
Yeah, I'm not going to bed. I'm not coming to bed. Yeah, you can just go. It's fine. Go on.
Well, there's something to be said. I look at, when you do a presentation, not even just the presentation itself, but like I don't want to call it pre-work, but you have to set the tone of the talk. So a lot of times people will say to me, how do you want to be introduced? And I'm like, I'll do my own introduction. Because I know what people need to hear. I want to start out with a joke or two at the very beginning to put everybody at ease. Start with people at ease, set the flavor of how everything is going to go for the remainder of the night.
You set the tone. That's right.
Yeah. And you have to set the tone. It's super duper important. And you did that with, like Picasso or Rembrandt.
Okay, well, let's think about, I will attribute that to the amount of patients that I see on a given day. You have the affluent, you have, like I mentioned before, maybe somebody who is lower income, not educated. You have the wide depth, you have race, religion, culture, everything. You have to adapt all the time. And you learn quickly when you mess up, you are more embarrassed than, so you learn very quickly. I think it's just been a skill I've been able to work on, being in some hairy situations.
Yeah, well, it was great. Go ahead, Mike.
So I was going to say, fishing. You need to come up. So, John, last time Jeremy was up, he just randomly showed up in Niagara Falls, didn't tell me he was coming. He's like, hey, you want to have lunch together? But next time he comes up...
Wait, hang on. When Mike says that, like, I'm eating pills and I'm randomly showing up at Niagara Falls, like, this is not the right picture. And we're, like, renting bicycles and driving them on the freeway. Mike.
It's very romantic.
Understand that there has to be some context around all of this. I didn't just
pills and Niagara Falls sounds very
context.
appropriate.
This was a family planned vacation with my wife and child.
Jeremy had a planned vacation in Niagara Falls that he didn't bother to tell me about because I was not privy to his family vacations. I don't understand why, Jeremy. You're supposed to run all these things by me. But anyways, last time Jeremy was up, we were talking about doing some fishing in the Great Lakes. So John, you'll have to tag in on that now next time if we make it happen.
I'll be the bait.
Well, now it's getting weird. It's too late at night for this to get kind of all the sexual tensions making it weird.
It's my birthday, Mike. You got to give me whatever I ask. Yes. So, yeah.
All right. Well, I think we're reaching the end. So, Jeremy, I'll leave it to you to give final thoughts. If there's anything else you want to leave patron members with, any other funny anecdotes, any more making fun of John, whatever you want to leave us with, we'll give you the last word.
Don't listen. You didn't do that once. Let's not start. Mike, stay out of this.
Well, he's been eager to beat the ugly redheaded stepchild. I want to give him an opportunity.
I'm not convinced I'm not.
And I'm not going to do that. I don't think that that's appropriate. I don't think that you should belittle people or demean them. You generally, even if it's in good fun, this isn't a firehouse, right?
We grew up in a different generation, didn't we? Yeah, it's. I got up. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I learned.
This is more professional. I would just like to say, in all honesty, I really appreciate you guys having me on the podcast. I truly do. It's when you told me you were doing a podcast on, like how to be a great presenter, and you were like, I'm going to ask Jeremy to do this. I was like bragging to my wife. I was like, I'm going to be on Mike's podcast. Like, he's doing the great presenter. And, and truly this really is an honor for me. And I'm grateful to you for this. And I'm grateful for even the opportunity to be here. And I hope that I keep your podcast proud. And, I'm trying to also support you guys as well by putting it out there incrementally on social media for you too, because I think what you guys are doing is great. And I think that what we have to do is, you guys mostly, not me, you guys do your thing. But I think that, your mission to help educate people who are in this field among a plethora of different things. I was talking to a nurse practitioner the other day, and I was talking to her about her CAQH, and she said, "What's that?" And it's that sort of stuff that we haven't been taught. So Mike and John, I think you both are going to fill this enormous void that we see in the medical community and truly help elevate this profession and people who wear the coats and people who are traveling along the path in their life.
We're happy to have boots on the ground with everybody, though. The guests, that's why we have everybody on, because you are the examples that we're trying to showcase.
Yeah, well, this is the how to do it wrong example.
No, this has been great.
There's a lot of people that
we had fun. We had a lot of fun.
Well, I really enjoyed myself, and I am grateful. I can't say it enough.
Well, I'm hoping that in the future, as things grow with the company, we want to have you back on. I would love to bring some of the folks back around and see where it's grown. Even coming from the podcast, we've been able to see a lot of networking and collaborations come from it. So we're excited for you too. We're hoping that this brings some light to what you're trying to do as well.
Well, thank you very much. And that's really great. And you guys have really blessed me, truly.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate meeting you. And let's talk a little bit more over texting, and you'll get some surefire, witty responses tonight.
Yeah. Hey, and listen, we honestly, in all seriousness, we really should go fishing. I'm not just saying
yes,
that.
We'll do it.
This is a dead serious. The three of us should get together, get out there, oh yeah, listen, here's the crazy thing. You ready for this? And then I'll be done. So I love to fish. And you know what you say to people who fish? You say tight lines, right? Like tight lines. And so I decided that that's going to be the title of my book, because what do I want to deliver from the stage? Tight lines.
I like it.
Not tight pants.
Well, I
For
mean,
this
maybe.
podcast, I should have worn my brown pants.
As long as you didn't have that butterfly tattoo too low, you know.
All right. Well, Jeremy, thank you so much. We'll be in touch, and we'll make sure to put all the links on there so listeners can get a hold of you if anyone has further questions, and we'll make sure to pass along questions as well. But otherwise, guys, have a great night. This was awesome.
Agreed. See you later, man.
All right. Bye.